Hi, I'm Chris Cooper. I was at Merchants Boys School between 1998 and 2005. I also have a stage name now. I'm Chris Lanceley. Chris Cooper was taken, sadly. So that's my middle name, Chris Lanceley.
I did wonder why, so that's answered that question.
Yeah.
And would you mind telling us a bit about what you do now, but also your journey from merchant to head of?
Um, well, I'm an actor. I've left, as I said, left Merchants in 2005. It really started at Merchants, I'd say, the whole interest in acting. It started in the junior school with Mr. Youngson. I'm not sure if Mr. Youngson's still there, but I'm sure a lot of people remember him. He, in my final year at the junior school, put up a little sheet, and I still remember it. It said, "Do you want to be in the play? Do you want barely any lines, some lines, or a lot of lines?" And I was kind of non-committal at that point. I didn't really know I would have an interest in this, so I picked the middle option, just a few lines. I played Nurse Anesthetic, I loved it. I think from that moment, as soon as I got into the senior school, I went to see every play. I auditioned for every play, and thankfully, Doc Gill was there to kind of nurture that interest. I was thinking about this last night about how um, there was obviously such an academic focus at Merchants, and that was great, and that prepared me so well for everything else that was to come. And the kind of extracurricular thing lives and dies on the teacher who's leading it, and I was so lucky to have Doc Gill for that. But also thinking more widely, Mr. Sutcliffe kind of nurtured a passion for cricket, and Mr. Slemon for rugby and all that sort of thing. So, and that served me well too, just to have a kind of rounded set of interests. Um, but I didn't audition for drama school going out of Merchants. I think that seems to be a theme. I've listened to a few of the other um, people, alumni who went into this business talking, and I think most haven't actually. Most went to university straight out of school, and I'm so glad I did. That was the choice for me, not necessarily for you, but for me. I wasn't ready for drama school, I think, at that point. Coming out of school, I think I needed to kind of live a little more and get more experiences to be the kind of actor that I wanted to be. I got Stanislavski's An Actor Prepares for Christmas, I think in lower six. And that gave me an interest in the method and method acting and that sort of thing. Um, I will say, when I was at university, which was Newcastle University, reading history, I probably did more drama than I did reading history with the Drama Society, Newcastle Theatre Society. I think that's when I realised that this was 100% something I wanted to throw myself into. In my final year there at Newcastle, I heard about the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. And New York was where Stanislavski's method was kind of turned into the method that we hear about today in the 1930s. And that really interested me. I don't know why. Something in me didn't want to go to London necessarily. So when I heard of this opportunity, I auditioned, thankfully got in, and went across in 2008. And I've pretty much been here ever since. I'm in New York, I'm in Queens. Yeah, the American Academy was fantastic. I left with an agent, which was really fortunate. But it's for me, it's been a lot of hard work to build the career. I know some actors come out of drama school and expect or get that immediate success, but I didn't get that right away. I got an agent, which was brilliant, but it's been well, I graduated about 12 years ago from drama school. It's been 12 years of hard work, putting in good auditions and getting to know people before I got any kind of success that I wanted, really, which is great. I'm happy I had that experience, because I think it's made me a better actor, a better performer, and a better professional throughout that. And now I'm sitting at home because the theatres are closed. But before that, I was on tour with The Play That Goes Wrong, which is on in the West End at the moment. It's toured a lot. they have a BBC show, and you saw the wrong show over Christmas. They have a Christmas special. So I was touring as the American Chris Bean, the director who introduces it all, the director, who, as he says, that's not me, who introduces it all. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now, and will be again in New York when the virus calms down a bit.
Fantastic. And so you say that you had to kind of work quite hard, well, throughout your career, but to start with particularly, what specifically did you do, and what can you do to kind of work and craft your skills, I suppose?
I think I was quite naive coming out of drama school. I remember, I thought that I was going to be in a TV show within 2 months, and I turned down a role in a play that wasn't. It was a very small fee, and I turned it down, thinking there were better things coming. I regret that now. I think what I realize now is that in order to get a foothold in the career, it was more putting in consistent, solid, good work in auditions, and even if to this day, that's so important to put in a good audition. You're not necessarily auditioning for the job that you're auditioning for. You're auditioning for the next audition. You're auditioning so that casting director will see your work and think, oh, that was good. Well, he's not quite right for this one, but we know that if we bring him in, he's going to do a good job and might strike gold with it. So that's been a kind of slow and steady process of auditioning, doing a good job, hoping to get called back, being a professional, and when I do get the job, being someone who's good to work with on set or in rehearsal room, and then the reputation kind of builds and grows from there. And the other side of that is kind of knowing my type and niche within the industry. Here, my niche is being British. I can audition for those British roles. I can do a good job of them. I'm quite flexible with them. So that's opened a few doors for me as well. And the same goes in London, I imagine, if you're there, finding what you're good at, making sure you know what you do well. Yeah, I think, and it's kind of a longevity thing too. 2000 and it's been about 10 years since I graduated. Things have happened in between that have taken me away from New York, that have taken me away from the industry for short periods, but I've always been able to go back. And I think that comes to the passion that was nurtured at Merchants. I've always been able to come back with that passion that I have and not be jaded or not be cynical, and because I love it, and just hit the ground running again and rebuild from where I left off.
Was your drama school experience different because you went to America to do that? Is it, is the teaching different? Is the method different? So you said you were kind of motivated by specifically method.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I think a lot of London schools will do teach the method, and there's lots of different kind of variations on it. I'm my kind of principal method, I suppose, would be Meisner Acting, which is the crux of it is being truthful and honest within the set of imaginary circumstances that the play gives you. And the method gets kind of a reputation for being very feeling the emotions, living the character, and that sort of thing. That's what it's born out of, I suppose. Strasberg would be one of the first New York proponents of the method that kind of came from Stanislavski, and he was very much live the character. If you had any emotional turmoil or feelings in your life that you can bring to a character, bring them, which I think around that time some teachers began to think that's not the healthiest way of doing things. That's not the healthiest way of approaching a role. So Meisner's approach is more to make you live in the moment of the play as best as you can. He takes it off you and puts it onto your scene partner. The famous exercise that he has is a repetition exercise, where if anyone's seen Louis Theroux's Weird Weekends, he does an episode on Broadway, and it ends with a whole sequence of people doing the Meisner technique. So you would sit opposite somebody in silence, and then the first time you notice something about them, something they do, something they raise an eyebrow, you'll say it, and then they'll repeat it back at you. And then and then if something, if I raise my shoulders, then you'll say, you raised your shoulders, and then it'll be repeated back and forth until you notice something else. And that's kind of the basis of the technique. It makes you take your cues from the other person, and then you layer on top of things like that the circumstance, or some stakes, or a task that you need to complete, and then eventually the circumstance, the space around you, and that sort of thing. But I love the technique because it takes, it makes you listen. I think there are a lot of actors, especially myself when I was younger, I didn't listen to the other actor. I wanted my performance to be my, I was worried about what I was doing, what I was saying, and how I said it. But really, if you're not listening to the other actor, it doesn't come across as truthful and real and honest. So this technique takes you off yourself, puts you on the other person, makes you listen to them, and makes you react to them. I also think it makes the performance different every night, because nobody's going to behave the same every night. The other person might try something different, say a line slightly differently, and it kind of informs your role differently, and the whole scene can cascade from that moment into within the direction of the play, of course. But I should say that because you had Guy, who's a director last time round, and he was in my year, within the direction that you've been given. But that's what I love about that technique, and that was kind of the principal technique that was taught to us at drama school. I think what I got from being there is that my teachers were students of these people who created these methods, and they layer on elements of Strasbourg where they make you recall memories and that sort of thing, so you can use it in elements of the other teachers, Adler, Uterhagen. I'm saying this so you can Google them if you want, and Chekhov as well. So yeah, and we got all sorts of that. Those things. We got a lot of voice and speech coaching, teaching me how to do an American accent, so I can compete here as well as with both sides of British roles and American roles. And just, I think the experience of being in New York as well, being in this city, I think it's hard to play a person unless you've kind of been a person. If that, been a person, lived more, experienced lots of things, been challenged. I think the more challenging situations, more interesting, curious situations, the more places I go, the more people I meet, that kind of makes me a better actor. So that just simply the experience of being here and going to school here and was really helpful.
And just probably a logistical question more than anything else. So obviously you lived and worked in New York. How does that work? Have you had to get permits? You have to,
yeah.
How does the red tape work?
That is challenging. There's so if you were to apply to a US school, there's a visa for students. It's called the F1 visa that they will help you get. Usually the school will help you get. They'll have a liaison for international students who will, especially at the school I went to, there were a few UK students around. So that was a real focus of theirs. So the F1 lasts for the time that you're at the school. You're allowed to work only at the school. So I worked as a phone answerer, during the evenings after my classes. Once you're done with the school, you get an optional, it's called the optional practical training, I think, OPT, occupational practical training, OPT, where you're allowed to work for a year in the field that you trained in. And after that, there's a whole host of ways you can kind of stay. There's an O1 visa, which is for people who are kind of exceptional in their field. If you're fortunate to fall in love with an American, you can get married and get a green card from there. And if you have any relatives, close relatives, siblings, parents, that's another way of remaining. But it's a challenge, and that's one of the reasons I mentioned that kind of took me away from New York and took me away from my career for a while. I didn't get the O1 visa when I planned to, so I had to return home, and I know that's something that happened. And then I had that kind of the conflict of, continue my career down in London, or do I try and work my way back to the US? And I chose the latter. After teaching merchants for a year, actually, as a maternity cover. If anyone's in upper six right now, you might remember me as your year 7 drama teacher.
And do you have any particular kind of favourites of the jobs you've done as an actor over the years? Any particular highlights?
Yeah, there's the play. I mean, The Play That Goes Wrong is that's the job that broke my career a little bit. The one that made me feel the most fulfilled, that I was making progress, that I was in the place that I wanted to be. And that was early 2019. I'd had jobs before that one. I'd made my off-Broadway debut in 2012, I think, but then left immediately afterwards. So I'd felt like it was kind of a rebuilding process. I moved back 6 years ago to the US, so I felt like the 4 years building up to getting the job in The Play That Goes Wrong was leading towards it. The audition process was fun but difficult. The first audition was in a room with just me, the casting director, and the assistant director. It was kind of a screening process to see if you can come back to the next stage. And the next stage was a group audition, which is rare, where there were 3 or 4 people auditioning for the role that I was auditioning for, and 3 or 4 people auditioning for every other role as well. We were given sides, which are the scenes that we audition with, and we were put into groups and mix and matched. And the writers, the ones you'll see in the Goes Wrong show, if you watch it on BBC, they were there, along with about 15 to 20 other people behind the desk. And then each time we did a scene, you would have all the other people who were auditioning for the same role you were sitting there watching you. It was scary, but it was fun. And I think I kind of I decided to enjoy it. It was an opportunity I'd never had before, and I went in there with the intention of just enjoying the experience, which I'm glad I did. I think that was what armed me for getting the job in the end. And then the next day, they cut a lot of people, and they brought back maybe 1 or 2 for each role. So they did a few of those group auditions the previous day, but they brought back just 1 or 2 people the next day. And I ended up booking Jonathan, who is he's one of the smaller roles, but he's the dead body in the murder mystery who can't stay dead. But I was understudying Chris, who is the lead, the director, and that was a terrifying prospect in itself. I'd never understudied, especially never understudied while also playing a role in the show, which was challenging, but I'm so glad I did it because it gave me so much experience, and eventually led to, when they were casting the national tour, me getting offered the role of Chris in the US national tour. So yeah, this is my favorite job, I would say, because it's the one I've enjoyed the most, met the best people on, and loved the experience, and seen that kind of progression from getting that role to being offered more roles, and hopefully, if other shows come across, being offered roles in those as well, which would be amazing. So I've loved this job, and I can't wait to go back to it when theatres reopen as well.
Such a shame for it to be on such a pause. So I suppose that does beg the question, what happens when it did shut down? You were out on tour and you had to...
Yeah, we were in Delaware, which thankfully is only 2 hours from New York on the train. But we just, where did we come from? I think we were somewhere in Texas, and we flew up to Delaware for a weekend engagement. I think we were only doing 5 shows, Friday night matinees and evenings on Saturday and Sunday. And we knew we had 2 days in the hotel before the first performance, so the crew were all putting the set in. And I remember a few of us walking down to the pharmacy to pick up or see if we could find any hand sanitizer or anything we could get, because we kept hearing these reports. And slowly, as the week went on, obviously the news got a little more dire. And then there was an interview with the president where he said, they're shutting down certain things and this could be worse. And we were called to the theatre about 3 hours before our Friday evening performance. We all sat in the house. The stage lights were dark, and the company manager sat us down and said, "We are not doing our Delaware engagement. We will be sending you back to New York, and we will hopefully be back in our engagement in, where was it, Albuquerque 2 weeks from there." And obviously that didn't happen. We all thought we'd be back within a few weeks, but no. It's a shame. It was, but that night we had a weekend in the hotel if we wanted it, but I took a train straight back to New York, and I've been here since. And I think that might be the last time I was in Manhattan, is when I got off at the train station, which is very strange.
That's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there? I mean, the world we're in, I don't think anyone's got any certainty beyond what they're having for tea tonight. But any indication or thoughts of when you might be able to get going again?
We're hoping August, I think, for Broadway reopening. So this show's off Broadway, but it's kind of under the Broadway bubble, if that makes sense, because it's an ex-Broadway show. We share a complex with Jersey Boys and Rock of Ages, two other ex-Broadway shows. I think Dr. Fauci, who's the medical expert here in the US, has been saying hopefully the fall or the autumn for Broadway, which would be great. So that's what we're keeping our fingers crossed for, if the vaccine all goes well.
Yeah, big if, but yeah, fingers crossed, absolutely. And so what have you been able to do with your time throughout? Have you been able to work? Have you been able to do anything?
I've had a few auditions, but they've been few and far between. Not for theatre. There's been some theatre allowed by our stage union, but they've not been the right roles for me, or I've not got an audition for them. But there's been some commercial auditions. TV is just starting to come back up again. Had a few callbacks, which are when you get called back for a second audition. I think they're called recalls. I've heard people in London call them recalls. And what I've really spent my time doing is kind of we got a studio for doing home auditions. Worked on that. Got lights, a tripod, camera. Figured out how to do the best, most professional looking auditions from home, which has been useful. I know a lot of my friends have been perfecting their voice recording booths. They've been buying those microphones and sound booths for their homes. I did a kind of charity. I'm running a kind of charity event every month with the Play That Goes Wrong US people. There's a tradition on Broadway every Friday night. Everyone will write their name on a dollar bill and throw it in a bag. And then at intermission, somebody will come on the radio, on the headsets, pull out $1 and say, "This person wins all the dollars this week." It's called Dollar Friday. So I've been doing a virtual version of that with all the people who have been in the Broadway tour, off-Broadway versions of our show. And we split the part down the middle. Half of it goes to a charity, half of it goes to whoever's name gets drawn out. So that's been great. We've raised a few $1,000s through that. So I've been running one of those every week, every month now. Now that I think we even back in April, we expected to be back in August, September. So now that it's clearly going to be so much further, we've reduced that. And I've been rereading acting books, rereading Stanislavski's An Actor Prepares and moving on from there. Just kind of trying to stay creative, trying to stay prepared. I've been making sure I still know my lines because it's been so long. The blocking of the play, that sort of thing. But it has been a challenge. It's been a challenge to go from such fun, something I loved so much, such momentum to nothing. But I've definitely gone 9 months without an acting job before. So as most actors, or a lot of actors do at some point in their careers. So I'm used to that.
Nothing if not resilient.
Yes. And that's what you have to have, I think, to go into this business. You have to have a real passion for it, and you have to be resilient. Don't be afraid of getting told no, because that'll happen a lot. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about auditions, and I mean, do you get nervous for auditions?
Very. I get incredibly nervous for auditions and performances. Yeah, it's. I mean, that's a challenge, to kind of calm your nerves down, to kind of ready yourself, and that's with the method of acting that you kind of the way you approach a role and approach an audition. Obviously, being calm and being able to focus on that is important. It depends what I'm auditioning for as well, I suppose, and what stage in the auditioning process I am. I audition for a lot of adverts. I've done a lot of adverts, and I don't tend to get nervous for those anymore. But television, theatre, because I want them all so badly, because I care about them all so much, I get nervous, and I have to spend a lot of time beforehand kind of calming myself down and getting in the right frame of mind for them. And I still, sometimes I get into the room and it just doesn't, they get the better of me sometimes, as they do with every actor. And then it's a process of putting that behind me, learning from it, learning the mistake I made, or learning how I got carried away. I've done great first auditions and then been called back and just haven't quite hit the mark as well as I did the first time. But that's all part of, if I'd have auditioned for drama school straight out of school, I'm just the kind of person who would have been too nervous in them to have really made an effect. So having waited 3 years to audition for my drama school and been to university and lived a bit and done that put me in a better frame of mind for that. And now, more experience I get, the more auditions I've been on in my career, the better prepared I am. But I still get nervous. I get nervous I've done 500 plus play that goes wrong performances, and I still get nervous before the show.
I think that's got to be normal, though. Surely,
Yeah.
It is a big deal, no matter how often you've done it.
Yeah.
So looking back to school, so you obviously didn't know for sure when you were at school what you wanted to do, so hence choosing to go to uni. But had you had the thought that you might like to go into acting?
I think I did kind of know that that's what I wanted to do. I just doubted whether I was good enough, I think, when I was at school. I think there were people when I was at school there was one boy in my year who had gone off to do an RSC show of Secret Garden. Can't remember what he did. And he was, I was thinking, he's already done this, and other people are getting the lead roles in the plays that I wanted to get. And I think I still, next to Doc Gill, have been involved in a lot of, I think Doc Gill and I counted how many plays each has been in. Obviously he's been involved in a lot, but I think I did every play I was available for from when I was in year 7 all the way through to upper 6, and then directed the lower school play when I was at school. Sorry, there's dogs down my hallway. So I think I doubted a little bit whether I could cut it, which looking back was silly, I think. I think if I'd have known what I know now back then, I think I would have just thrown myself into it fully, because it was and still is my passion, and that was nurtured at the school by Doc Gill and Mr. Holroyd and all those shows that we did. So yeah, I think that's. Sorry, I think I've lost my train of thought. Gone back to the original question.
Yeah, no, it was just whether you knew for sure when you were at school. But it's good to hear that it's good advice in a way that you did know you wanted to do it, but
yeah,
taking that time though obviously set you on the path that you were on. So it did.
I'm trying to be as honest as possible as well, because I don't want to say I knew then, and I did know then, but I doubted myself, and there was no need to do it because the training's out there, the learning's out there, and I was surrounding myself, I was doing the right things. I really was. That's the advice I give to when I teach or do talkbacks after a show to young actors, is just surround yourself with theatre, with the arts, with friends who love it, with online communities who love it. Watch as much theatre as you can. Audition for as much theatre as you can. Look at television shows and think, these are the roles I would like to play. And I was doing all of that, which I think I'm fortunate, because within all that kind of doubt of whether I was good enough, whether I should approach it, whether it was too much of a risk, that sort of thing, surrounded by that was me doing all of the right things to prepare myself for a career in this. So I'm lucky I did that in a way. But that's what I'd say. If you doubt it, if you don't think you're right for it, but it's what you're passionate about and you really want to do, as long as you have that passion and that ability to surround yourself and kind of just absorb as much of it as you can, then you're on the right path and you can do that.
Absolutely. And is there, I mean, you've kind of covered some really good advice for the pupils there, but they're obviously in quite a tricky situation at the moment.
Yeah.
Because they're not able to do is all those fantastic productions that so shaped so many of you that I talked to, not even just those of you that have gone into performing arts, everyone that was involved in the productions at school always refers back to them, always remembers them. You know, they're such a key experience away from the academic side of things. So what's quite challenging at the moment is that learning remotely really is all about the academic, and it's much harder. Those, you know, the kind of performance elements. But is there anything you think that they could be doing at the moment just to kind of keep tuned in, I suppose, and hopefully get to a place where they will be able to perform again?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you can, I'd recommend doing some kind of physical activity or vocal warm-up and keeping your body. I mean, that's just good advice generally during all of this, to keep fit, to stand up, to walk, to do things. But obviously vocally, that's kind of important for an actor to keep that up. But I would say kind of outside of that, just do what I was saying before. What if you're watching a television show? Watch the actors, watch the acting, watch what they're doing. Look at the people in roles that you want to play either now or in the future. Something I didn't understand while I was at school, which is why I was disappointed I didn't get the lead roles in all the plays that I auditioned for, is type. I wasn't the right type. You know, I wasn't the right look for this role. I didn't have the right voice or the right sound for this role. Talking of, you know, me being a British actor in New York, my type is British actor in New York. I can play those roles, but I'm not necessarily goofy British actor in New York. I'm kind of more of a straight leading man type a little bit, with a kind of a softer edge to it. Whereas, you know, at school, if I'd have gone for a role that was completely different than who I am, even if it was the lead, I would have been disappointed if I didn't get it. So really understanding who you are, what your type is, how a director or a casting director might see you in the industry will serve you well, not just in your career, but if you're thinking of auditioning for drama school as well, with picking the right audition piece. So if you're watching TV and watching films, or maybe get a National Theatre Live subscription and watch the plays on there, thinking the roles that you want to play, then ask yourself if you're necessarily the right person to play them, whether a casting director or a director would think you're the right person to play them. Why yes, why no, and just if you develop that knowledge when you're picking monologues for your drama school auditions, you'll pick something that's hopefully more appropriate for you. If I would have been auditioning for drama school at 18, I would have picked a piece from a play by Stephen Fry where I would have been a school teacher yelling at his pupils. But I was an 18-year-old boy and not a 50, 60-year-old public school teacher. I was probably more genial as a type than somebody who would be yelling and throwing books at his pupils. That would have been completely the wrong audition piece to choose, and I probably would have been, you know, laughed out of the room a little bit, maybe more politely. Whereas if I'd have chosen a character from, I was talking about this play the other day, DNA by Dennis Kelly, where they're all school students in the 16, 17 years old, and picked a monologue from that, would have been appropriate to me, to my type, to what I wanted to do. And it would have been an easier job to play it. Because I think it goes from that. If you know what you can play well and what you do well, once you've perfected that, and once you work on that, and once you know what that is, then you can start branching out and trying other things and morphing into other characters. But especially when you're auditioning for drama school, know your type, know who you are, and pick material that's appropriate to that. Because then that firstly, it makes your job easier because you're not trying to play against who you are, against your type. But also, I think the people on the other side of the desk will recognize that you've put the work in, that you understand who you are a little bit. That's why I say those 3 years of not going to university benefited me, because I came out of it with a better understanding of who I was, what I do well, who I play. And if you can develop that by the time you're 18, then and want to audition for drama school straight out of Merchants, then all the better for it. And you can do that while you're at home. You can watch these shows and get that knowledge. And the other thing I would say is to kind of perfect your knowledge outside of acting as well. You can read all these books I've mentioned by Stanislavski and Meisner and all of that as well. That would serve you really well to kind of get a rounded knowledge of how to approach a role and that sort of thing. But one thing that Merchants was great for me was the stage crew. I wasn't a member of the stage crew, but I had a lot of friends who were on the stage crew, and finding out what the other people on the stage every day are doing has served me so well. Touring with the show, you tour with the prop master, the lighting designer, the sound designer, the people who build the set and put it down every day, the guy who's in charge with the mechanical elements of the set. And having spent time with the stage crew and learned what they do, and I know you can't spend time with stage crew currently, but you can talk to those people. I'm sure you have groups of friends online who do that with the school. You can read and learn about what a jutting stage as opposed to a proscenium arch is, and you can learn how you would light each differently and that sort of thing, just so you have that knowledge, just so that that when you're working with these people, you're professional, courteous, and you have a kind of rounded knowledge of what that is. All of these things, I'm kind of jealous. I know it's terrible that you can't do these shows, but you have this opportunity to kind of round out your knowledge of the industry and what it is, which I was always too busy jumping up on stage to do.
That's really great advice, and actually could probably apply that out to pretty much any profession or any life that you're doing, but it's such a good idea to try and get an understanding of what all the other kind of cogs in the machine do, because it will help you immensely.
The person I've talked to most probably from The Play That Goes Wrong since everything closed down is the main costume wardrobe person from the tour. And being able to talk to her and having some kind of knowledge of costume and costume design and what she does. I had no idea there's somebody in the costume department before I did a play in the wardrobe department who washes all the costumes every night, who has to stay behind after the show, take all the costumes, clean them, wash them, and then hang them all up, and doesn't leave the theatre until 1 a.m. Until I did my first professional show. So having that knowledge in advance and that respect for the people I work with would have been, not that I disrespected them when I first started working with them, but having that knowledge is great.
Oh, that's a great idea. Very good lockdown project to be getting on with.
Yeah.
Well, as we're coming to the end of a kind of lesson time length, so we'll probably wrap it up now, but I'm sure if anyone has questions, would you mind if they sort of channel them through me and I can pass them through?
Please do. Yeah, I'd love any questions. I'm always happy to help, to answer, to everything. So yeah, please do.
Thank you so much. It is really appreciated, and well, I hope that I hope it's not too many months before you get back out on the road.
Me too. I'm actually excited myself to do more reading around the business now. So
there you go. You're in lockdown. Yeah. Where will you, when you do resume touring, will you go back to where you were, or will it be a completely reconfigured?
We're not sure if the tour is going back out again. I hope we would go back out again, because that's probably going to be a little easier. It won't rely on the tourism like New York does, so we can go to those locations and not have people travel too much. I'm hoping the tour goes back out. But if it doesn't, I'm rejoining the Play That Goes Wrong in New York. It's a place called New World Stages. And if you're coming, if you happen to be taking a trip to New York in this autumn or winter, let me know and I'll take you backstage if that's allowed at that point, or whatever. Just let me know and I'll give you the full experience.
Amazing. That would be fantastic. Well, I happen to have some family in New York, so we'll have to.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I know that actually we have had groups of pupils have been out and been to New York before. They met up with Jane Greenwood, who's an old girl who's a costume designer a few years ago. So
Amazing.
maybe there'll be a school trip. You never know.
That would be great. Yeah. Doc Gill came to see the show in Connecticut, actually.
Yeah, those photos were just brilliant. I think that's
yeah.
to see you, and fantastic. So brilliant. Okay, I'm just going to